Imagine living in a world where no matter what chaos erupts around you, you remain calm, steady, and unshaken like a lighthouse standing tall against violent storms. Most people today feel like small boats tossed in rough seas, constantly at the mercy of waves they can't control. The demands of work, the ups and downs of relationships, the endless noise of social media, the fear of missing out, and the crushing pressure to always be enough. We live in an age of constant reaction, where every text, every comment, every piece of news pulls at our emotions like strings on a puppet. But what if there was another way? What if you could learn to cut those strings, to step into a deep inner strength that nothing and no one could take away from you? What if, instead of reacting automatically to every challenge, you could respond with clarity, wisdom, and grace? That is what this video is about. Today, we're going to explore how to build a resilient and free life where you are no longer tossed around by external circumstances, but rooted in a powerful inner foundation. This isn't some fluffy self-help talk or a quick motivational high. What we're diving into comes from ancient wisdom, modern psychology, and practical strategies you can apply right now. The ancient Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca faced wars, political chaos, and personal tragedy, yet they discovered how to remain centered amidst it all. Modern science now confirms what they intuited thousands of years ago, that your greatest power lies not in controlling the outside world, but in mastering your inner world. In this journey, you'll learn how to move through 6 essential stages. First, we'll uncover the hidden emotional triggers that control so much of your behavior without you realizing it. These are the invisible scripts from your past that cause you to overreact in the present. Then, you'll discover the sacred pause, that brief but powerful space between stimulus and response where your freedom lives. With practice, you'll learn to create this pause so you can choose your actions instead of being ruled by impulses. Next, we'll explore mindfulness not as some abstract idea, but as a daily practice woven into the small moments of your life. Eating, listening, walking, breathing. This mindfulness will give you the awareness to catch emotional waves before they crash over you. From there, we'll dive into reframing, the skill of changing the story you tell yourself about what's happening. As Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. By shifting perspective, you could transform suffering into strength. Then we'll talk about boundaries, both with other people and with yourself. Without boundaries, you'll burn out, resent others, and lose yourself. Boundaries are acts of love that protect your energy and relationships. Finally, we'll bring it all together into the ultimate goal, inner freedom. This is where you live from the inside out, no longer enslaved by praise or criticism, success or failure. You'll still feel emotions, but they won't control you. You'll become like the deep ocean beneath the surface, calm, vast, and unshaken. Before we begin, I want to invite you to join me fully on this journey. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by life's storms, if you've ever wondered why some people seem unshakable while you feel tossed around, this video is for you. By the end, you'll not only understand these principles, but you'll have practical steps to start applying them today. If this message resonates with you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. Your support allows me to keep creating content like this, diving deep into topics that truly matter. And if you want to go even further, you can use the Super Thanks feature on YouTube to directly support this work. Every like, share, subscription, and donation helps this community grow and bring more wisdom into a world that desperately needs it. So, take a deep breath. Set aside distractions. This isn't just another video to watch passively. This is an invitation to transform how you experience your life. Let's step into the storm together, not to fight it, but to learn how to stand firm in the middle of it. Because true strength isn't about controlling the waves. It's about becoming the rock beneath them. Emotional triggers are like hidden landmines buried deep inside us. On the surface, they look like small, Every day, events, a coworker's tone in a meeting, a text left on read, a friend canceling plans at the last minute, a driver cutting you off on the freeway. These seem like minor annoyances, but when you suddenly feel a wave of anger, shame, or panic that feels far bigger than the moment itself, you've probably hit a trigger. A trigger is never just about what's happening right now. It's a bridge back to something older, a moment from the past when you felt powerless, unseen, or unsafe. Today's event is only the spark. The firewood was stacked years ago. Think about this. Your boss gives you constructive criticism, and your chest tightens, your pulse races. You don't just hear, "This slide needs work." You hear, "You're a failure." That feeling doesn't come from the feedback itself. It comes from a younger version of you, the kid who was yelled at for bringing home a B instead of an A, or the teen who was humiliated in front of the class. In this way, the present moment becomes a stage where old memories replay themselves. The Stoic philosophers understood this dynamic thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you're pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." In other words, it's not the event itself that causes your suffering, it's the meaning you assign to it. Modern psychology says the same thing, just in different language. In cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, there's a simple formula: situation, thought, emotion, reaction. Something happens, you interpret it in a split second, and that interpretation fuels your feelings and behavior. For example, your partner doesn't text you back. If you think they're busy, you feel calm. If you think they're losing interest in me, you feel anxious and angry. The exact same situation can lead to wildly different emotions depending on the story you tell yourself. The tricky part is that these stories are often unconscious. They come from core beliefs we absorbed in childhood, like "I'm not good enough," "people always leave me," or "I have to be perfect too." Beloved, when something in the present brushes up against those old beliefs, your body reacts as if you're back in that original moment. Neuroscience explains this beautifully. Your amygdala, the part of your brain wired for survival, doesn't distinguish between a lion chasing you and a boss frowning at you. It just detects threat and floods your body with adrenaline. Before your rational brain has a chance to weigh in, your body is already in fight, flight, or freeze mode. That's why you might snap at your partner over dishes or slam your laptop shut after a curt email. It's not just about dishes or emails. It's about something much deeper. I had a friend who experienced this firsthand. He once pitched an idea at work that he'd spent weeks perfecting. In a meeting, a senior manager brushed it off with a quick, "We'll circle back." My friend exploded internally. His face burned, his hands shook, and he barely heard the rest of the meeting. Later, he asked himself why his reaction was so intense. With some reflection, he realized it wasn't just about the idea being rejected. It was about being 9 years old, sitting at the dinner table, repeatedly silenced by adults who didn't value his voice. That day in the office, the same feeling of being unheard came rushing back. The trigger wasn't the manager's words, it was the old wound underneath them. Once he saw this, he could separate the past from the present and respond differently. Instead of lashing out or shutting down, he scheduled a calm follow-up meeting to get specific feedback and refine his pitch. Freud would call this a repetition compulsion. We unconsciously replay old scenarios, hoping for a different outcome. CBT calls it a schema, a deep-rooted mental pattern that shapes how we interpret the world. Whatever the label, the process is the same. An old belief gets activated, and suddenly today's situation feels life or death. The goal isn't to destroy these patterns overnight. It's to shine a light on them so they stop running the show. Here's how you can start. Step 1. Notice the surge. When you feel a strong emotional reaction, anger, fear, shame, pause, and mentally hit record. Write down what happened, what you felt, and what you told yourself about it. For example, boss said my report needed revisions. Thought, I'm incompetent. Emotion, shame, panic urge, quit my job. Step 2. Ask, what am I really reacting to? Often, your initial answer will be about the current situation. Dig deeper. Does this remind you of a past Experience? Does the intensity of your feeling match the facts? Or does it seem exaggerated? Step 3. Trace it back. What's the earliest memory where you felt something similar? Maybe your partner. Being late today feels just like waiting by the window for a parent who never showed up. Once you link the present feeling to an older source, you create space between then and now. You can comfort the younger version of you instead of letting them drive your current behavior. Let me share a story that illustrates this. A woman I know was constantly arguing with her boyfriend over what seemed like minor things: late replies, casual jokes, small mistakes. To outsiders, it looked like she was overreacting. In therapy, she began tracking her triggers. One night, after a fight about him forgetting to call, she remembered sitting on the front porch as a little girl, waiting for her mom to come home. Her mom struggled with addiction and often didn't show up. That feeling of abandonment, of being left behind, lived in her body. So when her boyfriend was late or didn't text back, her nervous system responded as if she were that little girl again. Once she made this connection, everything changed. She didn't stop having feelings, but she learned to say to herself, "This is old pain talking. He's late, but he hasn't abandoned me." She also asked her boyfriend for a simple adjustment. If he was running late, just send a quick message. This small change, combined with her self-awareness, dramatically reduced their fights. To build this kind of self-awareness, you can create a trigger journal. Each day, jot down moments when your emotions felt too big for the situation. Rate the intensity on a scale of 1 to 10. Note the automatic thought that came up. Over time, patterns will emerge. Maybe criticism always spikes shame. Maybe being ignored triggers anger. Maybe certain phrases set you off. These patterns are like a map to your inner world. The goal isn't to eliminate them overnight, but to understand them so they lose their power. It's also helpful to tune into your body. Triggers show up physically before they show up mentally. Your jaw tightens, your stomach drops, your shoulders hunch, your breath gets shallow. Learn to identify your personal signals. Maybe clenched fists mean anger. Maybe a hollow feeling in your chest means fear of abandonment. By catching these early, you can intervene before the reaction takes over. Try simple grounding techniques. Feel your feet on the floor. Name 5 things you could see. Breathe out longer than you breathe in. Even placing a hand on your chest and saying, "I'm safe enough right now," can calm your nervous system. Imagine a typical week. On Monday, your boss says, "This presentation needs work." Old story, "I'm failing." New response, pause, breathe, ask, "Which part lost you?" Tuesday, your friends make plans without inviting you. Old story, "Nobody wants me." New response, text someone directly, "Hey, can I join for part of the day?" Wednesday, your partner forgets an errand. Old story, "I can't rely on anyone." New response, calmly discuss reminders instead of launching into blame. Each of these moments is a chance to rewrite the pattern. You're not erasing your past. You're teaching your brain and body that today is different. There are pitfalls to watch for. One is making your triggers everyone else's responsibility. Saying, "That's my trigger," doesn't mean the world must tiptoe around you. It means you take ownership of healing. Another is pathologizing every strong feeling. Not all anger is a trigger. Sometimes it's a healthy response to injustice. The key is proportionality and repetition. If your reaction is consistently bigger and faster than the facts warrant, and it repeats across different situations, it's likely a trigger. Perfectionism is another trap. You will slip up. You will overreact. The goal isn't to become a robot who never feels. It's to shorten the time between reaction and repair. When you do overreact, acknowledge it. "That was my old story talking. Let me try again." This kind of repair actually builds trust with others because it shows humility and growth. Sometimes, triggers are clues about boundaries. If you always feel resentful when coworkers email you late at night, that's a sign you need to set limits, not just manage a reaction. Aligning your external world with your values can reduce reactivity. Many anger problems are really boundary problems in disguise. Combining ancient wisdom and modern science gives you a powerful toolkit. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum. imagining potential frustrations ahead of time so they wouldn't be caught off guard. You can do the same. Each morning, think of 3 possible challenges and plan your responses. Traffic will be bad, so I'll listen to a podcast. My boss might give blunt feedback, so I'll focus on the facts, not my story. My teenager might roll their eyes, so I'll stay calm and give them 2 choices. At night, reflect like Marcus Aurelius. Where did I do well today? Where did I let my old story take over? What can I practice tomorrow? Also, take care of your body. Lack of sleep, too much caffeine, constant scrolling, these lower your capacity to handle triggers. When you're tired or overstimulated, your brain is more likely to misinterpret small annoyances as big threats. Good sleep, healthy food, movement, and quiet time don't just make you healthier. They raise your emotional threshold so you can respond thoughtfully instead of reacting automatically. Finally, show compassion for the younger version of yourself who created these patterns. Those old defenses, people-pleasing, anger, withdrawal were once necessary for survival. They kept you safe when you had limited power. Now, you can thank them for their service and gently let them rest. When an old fear arises, try saying to yourself, I see you. I know why you're here, but I've got this now. That simple act of self-compassion can dissolve the intensity of a trigger. Understanding emotional triggers is not about never feeling upset again. It's about recognizing when the past is bleeding into the present, naming the story instead of being controlled by it, and choosing a response that fits who you are today. You'll still feel anger, sadness, fear. The difference is you won't be ruled by them. Instead of a small spark igniting a wildfire, you'll have the tools to keep the flame steady, using it to light your path instead of burning down your world. The sacred pause is one of the most powerful yet underrated tools we have for mastering our emotions. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, captured it perfectly. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This idea seems simple, but living it out is a lifelong practice. Most of us go through our days on autopilot. Something happens, a rude comment, a text we don't like, a driver cutting us off, and we instantly react. We yell, withdraw, send a harsh email, slam a door, or stew in silence. By the time we realize what happened, the damage is done. That tiny space between stimulus and response was there, but we blew right past it. The sacred pause is about learning to notice and expand that space so we can make conscious choices instead of defaulting to knee-jerk reactions. When you pause, even for a second or 2, you interrupt the chain reaction between emotion and action. Think of it like putting your brain in neutral before shifting into gear. It doesn't mean you suppress your feelings or pretend they aren't there. It simply means you acknowledge them without letting them run the show. Imagine you're in a tense meeting at work. A colleague criticizes your idea in a way that feels unfair. Your first impulse might be to snap back defensively or shut down completely. But instead, you take a slow breath, count silently to 3, and give yourself a beat before responding. In that tiny pause, your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, comes back online. You might choose to ask a clarifying question instead of attacking. You might even decide to table the issue and revisit it later when emotions aren't so high. That single moment of restraint can transform the entire conversation. What could have spiraled into conflict becomes an opportunity for collaboration. Parents experience this too. Picture a father coming home after a stressful day. His young son accidentally spills juice on the new carpet. The father's initial reaction is anger. He wants to yell, but then he remembers to pause. He takes a deep breath and counts to 5. In that space, he realizes his frustration is really about work stress, not his son's mistake. Instead of shouting, he calmly explains how to clean up the mess and hugs his son afterward. That small decision preserves the relationship and teaches the child that mistakes are opportunities to learn, not reasons to fear punishment. The pause doesn't just benefit you, it protects the people around you. From a neurological perspective, Pausing is powerful because it disrupts the fight or flight response. When we feel threatened, even by something as small as criticism, our amygdala floods our body with stress hormones. This makes us want to react instantly. A deliberate pause gives the nervous system time to settle, allowing the rational brain to catch up. It's like giving your internal alarm system a moment to reset before it goes off unnecessarily. This is why practices like mindful breathing are so effective. When you take 3 slow, deep breaths, you're literally signaling to your body, we are safe. There is no emergency. This creates enough space for thoughtful action. The Stoics understood this concept centuries before neuroscience confirmed it. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, practiced pausing every night through journaling. In his meditations, he wrote down the events of the day and reflected on how he responded. This nightly pause allowed him to see his own patterns clearly and prepare for future challenges. Epictetus, another Stoic teacher, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That is the essence of the sacred pause. Life will always throw unexpected difficulties your way. You cannot control other people's behavior, external events, or random misfortunes, but you can always control how you choose to meet them if you give yourself the space to choose. Think about common situations in everyday life where a pause could change everything. You're stuck in traffic, running late for an appointment. The car in front of you suddenly cuts you off. Your immediate impulse might be to honk, curse, or tailgate. If you act on that impulse, you arrive angry and frazzled, maybe even causing an accident. If you pause instead, take a breath, and remind yourself, this isn't worth my peace, you arrive calm and collected. Or consider an argument with a spouse or partner. In the heat of the moment, you're tempted to say something hurtful that you don't really mean. By pausing even for 5 seconds, you give yourself a chance to remember your love for this person and choose words that heal rather than harm. Over time, these small pauses build trust and intimacy rather than eroding them. Pausing is also deeply connected to dignity. When you react without thinking, you hand over control of your behavior to someone else. If a stranger insults you and you immediately lash out, they are controlling you. But when you pause, you reclaim your power. You show that your behavior is guided by your values, not by someone else's provocation. This kind of restraint is not weakness, it's strength. It's the quiet, steady strength that comes from knowing who you are and refusing to be tossed around by every external force. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this daily, writing, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The pause is where that power lives. Developing the habit of pausing takes practice, especially in a culture that values speed and instant reactions. Our phones buzz with notifications demanding immediate responses. Social media encourages quick takes and hot opinions. Work environments reward fast decision-making. In this constant rush, slowing down can feel uncomfortable, even risky. But true wisdom doesn't rush. Wisdom waits, observes, and responds deliberately. The pause is an act of rebellion against the chaos of the modern world. It's choosing to live intentionally rather than reactively. One simple practice is to focus on your breath. Before responding to a stressful email, pause and take 3 slow breaths. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice the sensation of air moving in and out of your body, and let your shoulders drop. Another technique is to silently count to 5 before speaking when you're upset. This creates a natural buffer between feeling and action. Some people find it helpful to repeat a calming phrase during the pause, like "peace begins with me," or "choose kindness." These small rituals can retrain your nervous system over time, making pausing your default response. You can also practice pausing proactively, not just in moments of stress. Meditation is essentially extended pausing. Even 5 minutes a day of sitting quietly and observing your thoughts can strengthen your ability to notice the space between stimulus and response. Journaling, like Marcus Aurelius did, is another form of pausing. When you write about your day, you slow down enough to see patterns and prepare for future challenges. Over time, these practices expand the space inside you so that pausing feels natural even in high-pressure situations. Imagine you're leading a team at work and a heated conflict breaks out during a meeting. Voices rise, tempers flare. If you jump in impulsively, you might escalate the conflict. But if you pause, take a breath, let a few seconds of silence fill the room, you send a powerful signal of calm. That brief pause often causes others to settle down as well. Then you can respond with clarity and authority. Leaders who master the pause create environments where thoughtful decisions are made, rather than rash ones. The same principle applies at home. When a child misbehaves, a parent's pause communicates safety and stability. The child learns that mistakes don't automatically lead to punishment, and the parent models emotional regulation. It's important to note that pausing doesn't mean doing nothing. It's an active process of observing and choosing. Think of it like standing at a fork in the road. Without a pause, you race down the first path without realizing there were other options. With a pause, you see the full map. You might still choose the same action, but now it's deliberate rather than automatic. Sometimes, after pausing, you'll decide to walk away. Other times, you'll decide to speak up with firmness. The power lies in the fact that you decided, rather than letting your emotions decide for you. The benefits of pausing ripple outward into every area of life. It reduces impulsive decisions you later regret, whether that's sending an angry text, making a bad purchase, or quitting a job in a moment of frustration. It deepens relationships by preventing unnecessary hurt. It strengthens your reputation at work as people see you as thoughtful and steady under pressure. Most importantly, it builds inner peace. When you know you can handle whatever life throws at you without being tossed around emotionally, you carry a quiet confidence that others can feel. This is what the Stoics meant by living in harmony with nature, not controlling external events, but mastering your internal landscape. Consider how many conflicts in history could have been avoided if someone had paused. Wars have been sparked by impulsive decisions. Families have been torn apart by words spoken in anger. On a smaller scale, think about your own life. How many arguments, mistakes, or regrets could have been prevented by just a few seconds of stillness? The sacred pause may seem small, but its impact is enormous. It is the difference between living reactively and living intentionally. To integrate this into daily life, start small. The next time you feel triggered, don't try to fix everything at once. Just notice. Say to yourself, pause. Take one deep breath. That's it. Over time, build on this. Add counting to 5. Add a mantra. Add reflection afterward. Like any skill, pausing grows stronger with repetition. Eventually, it becomes second nature. You'll find yourself pausing without even thinking about it, like a dancer who moves gracefully because they've practiced the steps countless times. Life will never stop, giving you stimuli. People will still be rude, accidents will still happen, disappointments will still come. You can't change that. What you can change is what happens in the space between. That space is where your freedom lives. It's where you choose whether to lash out or let go, to escalate or to escalate, to create harm or to create healing. In that small, sacred space, you shape not only your own character, but also the world around you. The pause is where transformation begins. Mindfulness isn't about escaping to a mountain or sitting cross-legged for hours while chanting. It's about showing up fully for your life, moment by moment, no matter how ordinary or messy that moment might be. At its core, mindfulness means paying attention on purpose, without judgment, to whatever you're doing right now. It's less about slowing down time and more about actually being alive while time is passing. Most of us live on autopilot. We rush through breakfast while checking email, drive to work while rehearsing arguments in our heads, listen to our kids while scrolling through Instagram. We're constantly anywhere but here. Mindfulness flips that script. It asks, can you simply be present for this bite of food, this breath, this conversation? You don't need hours of meditation to practice mindfulness. You need small, consistent choices to come back to the present. Imagine sitting down to eat. Most people today will put their plate in front of them, open their phone, and mindlessly scroll while shoveling food into their mouths. The meal is gone before they even taste it. Practicing mindfulness here means putting the phone down and just eating. Notice the smell, the texture, the flavors. Feel gratitude for the fact that you have food at all. When your mind drifts to work stress or that fight you had last night, gently bring it back to the next bite. It sounds simple, but this single change can radically reduce stress and improve digestion because your body knows you're actually present. The same is true in conversations. How often do you truly listen when someone is talking to you? Most of the time, we're not listening, we're waiting to respond. We're busy preparing our next argument, defending ourselves, or judging what the other person is saying. Mindfulness in conversation means giving your full attention to the other person. Look them in the eye. Hear their words without immediately filtering them through your own story. This doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It simply means you let them feel heard. In workplaces, relationships, and families, this one skill can prevent endless conflict. Imagine a manager in a tense meeting. Instead of jumping in to defend herself, she pauses and listens carefully to her team's concerns. Because she's truly present, she hears what's underneath the words fear, frustration, the need to be valued. Her mindful listening diffuses the tension and opens the door for solutions. Mindfulness blends beautifully with Stoic philosophy. The Stoics weren't sitting in monasteries. They were emperors, generals, merchants, living in the chaos of everyday life. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not as a book for others, but as a private journal to keep himself centered amid the pressures of ruling Rome. This nightly practice was a form of mindfulness. It forced him to slow down, reflect, and observe his own mind without judgment. Today, you could do something similar. At the end of the day, take 5 minutes to write about what happened. Know where you reacted well and where you lost your cool. This is not about beating yourself up. It's about becoming aware of your patterns so you can make better choices tomorrow. Mindfulness also helps you catch emotional reactions before they explode. Think of emotions like a pot of water on the stove. When you're not paying attention, the water boils over suddenly, making a mess. When you're mindful, you notice the tiny bubbles forming long before it boils over. You turn down the heat or move the pot entirely. For example, you might notice that when someone interrupts you in a meeting, your chest tightens and your jaw clenches. That's the first bubble. Instead of snapping, you pause, breathe, and choose a calm response. Over time, this kind of awareness makes you less reactive and more resilient. Real-world mindfulness doesn't require special tools or quiet rooms. It lives in everyday actions. When you're washing dishes, just wash the dishes. Feel the warm water. Notice the soap bubbles. Smell the clean plates. When you're walking to your car, actually feel your feet hitting the ground. Notice the sky, the air on your skin. When you're waiting in line at Starbucks, instead of pulling out your phone, simply observe the people around you. Notice your breath. Notice your impatience, rising and falling. These moments of practice add up like drops filling a bucket. Over time, you build a mind that is calm even when the world is chaotic. A powerful mini-story illustrates this. A business executive I know was drowning in stress. His company was going through a merger, and every meeting felt like a battle. His employees were tense, communication was breaking down, and he was carrying the weight of everyone's anxiety. He decided to try a simple mindfulness practice. Before each meeting, he would take 2 minutes alone to breathe and ground himself. During the meeting, whenever he felt tension rising, he silently said to himself, "Be here." He focused on really listening to each speaker instead of rehearsing his responses. After a few weeks, he noticed something remarkable. His stress dropped by nearly 70%, and his team started mirroring his calmness. Instead of chaotic debates, meetings became focused and productive. His relationships with his employees improved because they felt seen and respected. Nothing about the external situation changed. The merger was still stressful, but his inner state transformed. Everything. The science behind this is clear. Mindfulness activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the body and brain. It lowers cortisol levels, improves focus, and strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and self-control. This is why even a few minutes of mindful breathing can make you feel more centered. It's like giving your brain a reset button. And just like going to the gym builds muscle, practicing mindfulness regularly builds mental strength. At first, it might feel awkward or even pointless, but over time, the benefits compound. Mindfulness also changes how you relate to time. When you're lost in thought, the day blurs by. You get to the end of the week and barely remember what happened. When you're mindful, time slows down. You actually experience your life instead of rushing through it. Eating breakfast with mindfulness turns 5 minutes into a rich sensory experience. Walking mindfully to your car transforms a mundane moment into a chance to connect with the world around you. This isn't about squeezing productivity out of every second. It's about savoring your existence. People often resist mindfulness because they think it's boring or woo-woo. But mindfulness is deeply practical. It helps you handle everyday stressors with grace. For example, imagine you're stuck in a long line at the grocery store. Most people would get irritated, check their phone, or complain. A mindful person notices the irritation rising, takes a deep breath, and chooses to simply stand there. Maybe they notice the colors of the produce, the sound of conversations around them, the feeling of the floor beneath their feet. The external situation hasn't changed, but their internal experience is peaceful instead of agitated. Multiply this by hundreds of small moments throughout the day, and you can see why mindfulness has such a profound effect on mental health. Stoic philosophy adds another layer of meaning to this. The Stoics taught that we can't control external events, only our judgments and actions. Mindfulness helps you see those judgments in real time. For instance, if someone cuts you off in traffic, the Stoic response isn't to suppress anger or pretend you don't care. It's to notice the anger arising, see the thought they disrespected me, and realize that this thought, not the car, is causing your suffering. Then you can let the thought go and continue driving peacefully. In this way, mindfulness and Stoicism work together. Mindfulness gives you the awareness, and Stoicism gives you the framework for wise action. Practicing mindfulness doesn't mean you'll never get upset or distracted. You will. The goal isn't perfection. It's about shortening the gap between distraction and awareness. When you notice your mind wandering, gently bring it back without criticism. That moment of noticing is itself mindfulness. It's like strength training for your attention. Every time you bring your focus back, you're building resilience. One of the most powerful things about mindfulness is how it deepens relationships. When you give someone your full presence, it's a gift they can feel. Think about how rare it is to be truly listened to. When a friend or partner listens without interrupting, without checking their phone, you feel valued. You can do that for others by practicing mindful listening. It's not complicated. Put down your phone, make eye contact, and resist the urge to mentally rehearse your response. Just listen. This simple act can heal conflicts and build trust faster than any clever argument. In workplaces, mindful leaders stand out. They don't rush to judgment or react impulsively. They take a beat, consider different perspectives, and respond thoughtfully. Their calm presence creates a ripple effect, lowering the collective stress of the team. Over time, this builds a culture of trust and collaboration. Employees feel safe to speak up because they know they'll be heard. This directly impacts performance and retention. Mindfulness isn't just a personal practice, it's a leadership skill. Mindfulness also has a way of revealing the beauty hidden in ordinary life. When you slow down and pay attention, you start noticing things you usually overlook. The way sunlight filters through leaves, the laughter of a stranger, the taste of perfectly ripe fruit. These small moments add richness to life. You realize that happiness isn't something to chase in the future. It's something you can touch right now, in the middle of doing dishes or commuting to work. This shift in perspective is profoundly liberating. You stop waiting for some perfect moment and start living fully in the one you're in. The path to mindfulness is simple, but not always easy. Start small. Pick one daily activity and make it a mindfulness practice. Maybe it's brushing your teeth. Instead of letting your mind wander, really focus on the sensation of the toothbrush, the taste of the toothpaste, the sound of the bristles. Or choose your morning. Coffee. Smell the aroma. Feel the warmth of the mug. Savor the first sip. These small practices build the habit of presence. Over time, you can expand to more moments. When stress hits, mindfulness becomes a lifeline. Imagine you're about to give a big presentation. Your heart races, your palms sweat. Instead of spiraling into panic, you take 3 slow breaths and focus on the feeling of your feet on the ground. You notice the rise and fall of your breath. This grounds you in the present and calms your nervous system. You still feel nervous, but now you can function. Athletes, performers, and public speakers use these techniques all the time. Mindfulness doesn't erase fear. It gives you the tools to work with it. Ultimately, mindfulness is about reclaiming your life from distraction. It's about waking up to the reality that this moment, this very breath, is all you ever truly have. You don't need to wait for a vacation, a promotion, or a relationship to feel whole. You can practice presence right here, right now, in the midst of ordinary tasks. By doing so, you not only reduce stress and increase joy, but you also become a more compassionate, grounded human being. As Marcus Aurelius might say, if you live today, pay attention because your life is happening now, not later. Mindfulness is how you make sure you don't miss it. Reframing is one of the most powerful mental tools we have to regain control over our emotions. At its core, reframing means looking at a situation from a different angle so that it no longer has the same emotional grip on you. It's not about denying reality or lying to yourself. It's about shifting your perspective to reduce unnecessary suffering and to see the bigger picture. Our minds are storytelling machines. When something happens, we instantly create a story about what it means, often without even realizing it. Those stories, more than the events themselves, determine how we feel. If a friend cancels dinner plans, the bare fact is simple. Dinner won't happen tonight. But your mind might leap to, they don't care about me, or I'm always the one people abandon. That story creates a flood of hurt or anger, even though it might not be true. Reframing steps in like a wise friend and says, hold on, could there be another way to see this? Maybe your friend had an emergency. Maybe they were exhausted after a long day. Maybe it has nothing to do with you at all. That single shift changes your emotional state completely. Instead of spiraling into resentment, you feel understanding or at least calm neutrality. The Stoic philosopher Seneca captured this perfectly when he said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of our pain doesn't come from the facts of life, but from the interpretations we layer on top of them. The traffic jam isn't inherently painful. It's our story about how unfair it is, how it's ruining our day, how other drivers are idiots that creates the suffering. The criticism from a boss isn't inherently devastating. It's the story that says, I'm worthless or I'm about to be fired. That makes it so unbearable. Reframing helps you separate fact from fiction, reality from imagination. When you do that, you reclaim your power. Think about a common scenario. You send a text to a friend, and hours go by without a response. Instantly, your mind starts spinning. They must be mad at me. I must have done something wrong. They don't value this friendship. Your anxiety grows with each passing minute. Now try reframing. Pause and ask yourself, is this the only way to see this? Maybe they're in a meeting. Maybe their phone died. Maybe they saw the message and planned to reply later when they could get proper attention. Suddenly, your body relaxes. The facts didn't change, the text is still unanswered, but your story changed. So your emotions did too. This doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior indefinitely. If the pattern continues, you can address it directly. But in the moment, reframing prevents you from torturing yourself with assumptions. Reframing works in high-stakes situations too. Imagine an athlete about to compete in the Olympics. Their heart races, palms sweat, thoughts race. I'm so nervous. What if I fail? That interpretation makes the body's stress response feel like a threat. But if they reframe the exact same sensations as excitement, my body is ready. This adrenaline will help me perform. Their performance improves dramatically. The physical state is identical, only the story changes. This principle applies to public speaking, job interviews, first dates, even parenting. When your toddler is screaming in a grocery store, you can frame it as, they're trying to make me look bad, which fuels anger and shame. Or you can frame it as, they're overwhelmed and need comfort, which opens the door to compassion and problem solving. One practical way to reframe is to write down the story your mind is telling. Get it out of the swirl in your head and onto paper. For example, situation, coworker didn't greet me this morning. Story, they don't like me. They're plotting against me. Then ask, is this story true? What evidence supports it? What evidence contradicts it? Maybe they were distracted or in a rush. Maybe they didn't even see you. By examining the story like a detective, you loosen its grip. You can also brainstorm alternative interpretations. This isn't about finding a sugary, positive spin on everything. It's about acknowledging that your first interpretation is rarely the only one. The Stoics practiced a similar technique they called premeditatio malorum, or premeditation of evils. They would imagine possible challenges ahead of time and plan their responses calmly, so they wouldn't be blindsided when things went wrong. For example, Marcus Aurelius might begin his day thinking, today I will meet people who are selfish, rude, or ignorant. That is part of life. It does not need to upset me. This is reframing in advance. By expecting difficulties, he framed them as normal rather than catastrophic, which reduced his emotional volatility. Reframing doesn't just change how you feel. It changes how you act. When you're caught in a negative story, your behavior tends to reinforce it. If you believe your friend doesn't care, you might withdraw or act cold, which creates distance, which seems to confirm the story. When you reframe, you break that cycle. You might instead reach out with kindness, which often draws the other person closer. This creates a positive feedback loop instead of a downward spiral. Let's look at a workplace example many people can relate to. You give a presentation, and your boss says, this needs improvement. Old frame, I'm a failure. I'll never be good at this. Emotion, shame, anxiety, maybe anger. New frame, they want me to grow. This is an opportunity to learn. Emotion, motivation, curiosity. The external event is identical. The difference is internal, and it determines whether you sulk or succeed. This doesn't mean you have to pretend criticism feels great. It simply means you choose the most useful interpretation. Sometimes, reframing requires zooming out. When you're in the middle of a conflict, your view narrows. Everything feels urgent and personal. Try asking, how will this look a week from now? A year from now? 5 years from now? Most of the time, you realize that what feels huge today will barely matter later. This perspective shift takes the intensity down several notches. It's like looking at a storm from an airplane. On the ground, it feels endless. From above, you see it's just a small patch of clouds in a vast sky. Another helpful question is, what else could this mean? Suppose your partner seems distant. Instead of assuming they don't love me anymore, you consider alternatives. They might be stressed about work. They might be tired. They might be processing something unrelated to me. This curiosity opens the door to conversation rather than accusation. In CBT, therapists call this cognitive restructuring. It's a core skill for managing anxiety and depression because it directly challenges distorted thinking. Reframing can even transform trauma. Survivors of difficult experiences often carry beliefs like, I'm broken, or I'm powerless. Through therapy and mindful practice, they can gradually reframe those beliefs. I went through something terrible, but I survived. I'm stronger than I realized. This doesn't erase the pain, but it changes the relationship to it. The past becomes a source of wisdom rather than a permanent prison. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, wrote about this. in man's search for meaning. He said that while we can't always control what happens to us, we can control the meaning we assign to it. That's reframing at its deepest level. Of course, reframing isn't always easy. When emotions run high, your brain clings tightly to its first interpretation. That's why it helps to practice in low-stakes moments. Start with something small, like a delayed flight or a spilled coffee. Instead of immediately labeling it ruined day, pause and ask, is there another way to see this? Maybe the delay gives you time to read a book or call a friend. Over time, you'll build the muscle to apply reframing even when the stakes are higher. There's also a difference between reframing and toxic positivity. Reframing doesn't mean forcing yourself to see everything as good or pretending pain doesn't exist. If you lose a job, you don't have to immediately jump to "this is amazing." That would be fake and unhelpful. A healthy reframe might be "this is hard and scary," but it might open the door to a better opportunity. It acknowledges the difficulty while still offering hope. Practical tools can make reframing more accessible. One is the thought record, a staple of CBT. You write down the triggering situation, your automatic thought, the emotion it created, and then challenge the thought by listing evidence for and against it. Finally, you create a more balanced thought. For example, situation, friend didn't invite me to dinner. Automatic thought, they don't like me. Emotion, sadness, anger. Evidence for, they've been distant lately. Evidence against, they texted me yesterday to check in. They've invited me many times before. Balanced thought, they probably had a reason. I'll ask instead of assuming. This structured process trains your brain to default to balanced thinking over time. Another tool is mindfulness. When you notice yourself spiraling into a negative story, take a deep breath and observe the thoughts without identifying with them. Instead of "I am rejected," think, "I am having the thought that I am rejected." That slight distance creates space for reframing. The Stoics did this too. They practiced viewing their own thoughts as separate from their core selves. Marcus Aurelius would write about his fears and desires as if they belonged to someone else, which made it easier to evaluate them calmly. A fun way to practice reframing is to imagine you're a director filming a scene. In one version, you zoom in tightly on the most dramatic element, the spilled coffee, the rude comment, the traffic jam. It feels intense and overwhelming. In another version, you zoom out. You see the whole street, the whole city, the whole planet. Suddenly, your problem is tiny, just one moment in a vast universe. This mental camera work reminds you that perspective is everything. Reframing is also contagious. When you practice it, the initial frame might be, "We failed. This is a disaster." Morale plummets, and creativity shuts down. A leader who knows how to reframe might say, "This is tough, but it's feedback. We learned what doesn't work, and now we're better prepared." The situation hasn't changed, but the energy has. People feel motivated instead of defeated. This isn't just feel-good talk. It directly impacts outcomes. In personal life, reframing can save relationships. Imagine a couple arguing about household chores. One partner frames it as, "You never help because you don't respect me." The other frames it as, "You nag because you think I'm incompetent." These frames lead to endless fights. But if they both reframe, we have different expectations because of how we grew up. They can approach the problem as a team instead of enemies. The external issue, dishes, laundry, remains, but the emotional battlefield dissolves. Ultimately, reframing is about freedom. When you believe your first interpretation is the only truth, you're trapped. You react automatically, often in ways you regret. When you realize you can choose a different frame, you become the author of your experience. This doesn't mean you control everything. Life will still bring pain, loss, and injustice. But you control how you meet those realities. As the Stoics taught, you can't always control external events, but you can control your inner world. Reframing is the bridge between external chaos and internal peace. It takes practice, humility, and courage to question your own thoughts. But every time you do, you grow stronger. The next time you feel upset, pause and ask yourself, what story am I telling right now? Is this the only way to see it? What else could this mean? That simple act can transform not just your mood, but your entire life trajectory. Like Seneca said, most of our suffering is in our imagination. Reframing helps you step out of that imagined prison and into a reality where you are free to choose how you feel and how you act. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They are guidelines that protect your energy, your time, and your mental well-being. Many people think boundaries are only about saying no to others, but they're also about saying no to yourself when you engage in habits that harm you. Personal boundaries are like the rules of a game. You set them to keep life balanced and fair. Without clear boundaries, resentment builds, relationships suffer, and you end up feeling out of control. A classic example is work. If you don't define when your workday ends, emails and Slack notifications will creep into your evenings, robbing you of rest and connection with family. And you always listen even when you're drained. Over time, you start dreading their calls but keep answering to avoid guilt. The healthier move is to be honest. I care about you, but I don't have the energy for a long call tonight. Can we talk tomorrow? That small statement protects your relationship by preventing silent resentment from poisoning it. Boundaries are acts of love, not selfishness. They allow you to show up fully when you choose to engage, instead of half-heartedly while secretly wishing you were somewhere else. Work-life balance is one of the most obvious areas where boundaries matter. In today's culture of constant connectivity, many people feel pressure to always be on. If your phone is buzzing at 11 p.m. with work messages, it's easy to feel like recovery time. It also models healthy behavior for others. If you're a manager, your lack of boundaries will encourage burnout in your team. By protecting your own limits, you give others permission to do the same. Boundaries aren't just external, they're internal. You need boundaries with your own behaviors, thoughts, and emotional patterns. Maybe you have a tendency to ruminate late at night, replaying arguments or worrying about the future. An internal boundary might be, when I notice myself spiraling, I will redirect my attention with a grounding exercise. Or maybe you tend to overschedule yourself, leaving no room to breathe. An internal boundary could be, I will only commit to 3 social events per week. These self-imposed limits prevent burnout and help you live in alignment with your values. Boundaries are deeply connected to self-compassion. Without compassion, boundaries can become rigid walls built out of fear or anger. Self-compassion means acknowledging that you're human, flawed, imperfect, and still worthy of love. It's easy to be kind to others while being harsh with yourself. Many of us have an inner critic that shouts louder than any external voice. When you mess up at work, miss a workout, or snap at a loved one, your inner critic says, "You're terrible. You'll never change." Self-compassion offers a different voice. I made a mistake, but that doesn't define me. I can repair and grow. This mindset doesn't excuse bad behavior. It fuels the courage to take responsibility and try again. Acceptance of imperfection is part of this process. Failure isn't proof that you're broken. It's evidence that you're trying. Think of a child learning to walk. When they fall, no one says, "What's wrong with you? Why can't you do this perfectly?" They're encouraged to get back up and keep going. Adults deserve the same grace. If you hold yourself to impossible standards, you'll live in a constant state of disappointment. By accepting that setbacks are part of the journey, you create space for growth. This acceptance naturally extends to others. When you see your own humanity clearly, you can forgive others for theirs. Someone's hurtful behavior may still need to be addressed, but you don't have to carry bitterness forever. Forgiveness isn't about saying what happened was okay. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of constant anger. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This idea ties boundaries and responsibility together. You can't control what other people do. You can't control whether someone respects your boundary. whether your boss is fair or whether life throws unexpected challenges at you. What you can control is how you think about those events and how you respond. Responsibility in this sense isn't about taking the blame for everything. It's about owning your reactions instead of outsourcing them. When you say, "You made me angry," you give someone else power over your emotions. A more responsible statement is, "When you said that, I felt angry." The difference may seem small, but it matters. It reminds you that your feelings are yours to manage. Many people resist this idea because it feels unfair. Why should I have to manage my anger when someone else was rude? But refusing to take responsibility leaves you stuck. If you're waiting for the world to stop being rude before you can feel peace, you'll wait forever. Responsibility is freedom. It means that no matter what chaos swirls around you, you still have a choice. Viktor Frankl, another great thinker, survived Nazi concentration camps and later wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Boundaries protect that space. Self-compassion gives you the strength to use it. Responsibility reminds you that no one else can use it for you." Consider a common scenario. You've had a stressful day, and your partner makes a careless comment. You feel a surge of irritation. Without awareness, you snap back, and a small comment snowballs into a fight. Later, you might say, "You ruined my night." But if you take responsibility, you realize the sequence. Stress was the stimulus, irritation was the reaction, and you had a moment, however brief, where you could have paused. Next time, you might say instead, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Can we take a break and talk later?" That's responsibility in action. It doesn't deny that your partner's comment was unhelpful, but it keeps you focused on what you can control, your words and actions. Boundaries, compassion, and responsibility reinforce each other. Without boundaries, you burn out and become resentful. Without compassion, boundaries become harsh ultimatums. Without responsibility, you slip into blame and helplessness. Together, they create emotional maturity. Imagine a triangle. One point is "this is what I will and won't allow in my life," boundaries. The second point is "I am kind to myself and others, even when we fail," compassion. And the third point is "I own my part and choose my response," responsibility. When all 3 points are strong, your relationships and your inner world become stable. Take work as an example. Suppose your manager regularly assigns tasks at the last minute. Without boundaries, you accept everything and quietly resent it. Without compassion, you beat yourself up for feeling stressed and snap at coworkers. Without responsibility, you blame your manager entirely and feel powerless. The balanced approach might look like this. You set a boundary by saying, "I need at least 24 hours notice for new projects." You show compassion by understanding that your manager may be under pressure too. You take responsibility by managing your own workload and calmly communicating what you need. The situation may not change overnight, but you change, and that shift ripples outward. In families, boundaries and compassion are essential. Parents who never set boundaries raise children who feel unsafe and confused. But parents who enforce rules without compassion create fear instead of respect. A compassionate boundary might sound like, "I understand you're upset, but yelling isn't okay. Let's talk when you're calm." This teaches children that emotions are valid, but behavior has limits. Adults need the same lessons. In romantic relationships, boundaries prevent codependency. Compassion prevents coldness. Responsibility prevents endless cycles of blame. A partner might say, "When you cancel plans last minute, I feel hurt. I need more notice in the future." This statement combines all 3 elements: a boundary, a compassionate tone, and ownership of one's feelings. One common misconception is that boundaries push people away. In reality, they create intimacy. When you know where someone's limits are, you can trust them. Unspoken expectations breed conflict. Clear boundaries bring relief. The same goes for self-compassion. People often fear that being gentle with themselves will make them lazy. The opposite is true. Research shows that self-compassion actually increases motivation. When you treat yourself like a friend instead of a drill sergeant, you're more likely to take positive action because you're not paralyzed by shame. Responsibility works the same way. Taking ownership of your emotions doesn't mean excusing bad behavior from others. It means you stop waiting for them to change before you can feel better. It's an internal boundary. I will not let someone else's choices dictate my peace. Practical steps help bring these ideas to life. Start by identifying one area where you feel consistently overwhelmed or resentful. That's a sign a boundary is needed. Write down what you're willing to do and what you're not. Then communicate it clearly without apology. When guilt arises, as it often will, practice self-compassion. Remind yourself that saying no is an act of care, not cruelty. Finally, notice your self-talk. When you catch yourself blaming others for your feelings, pause and reframe. I can't control them, but I can control how I respond. This shift is subtle but transformative. Boundaries, compassion, and responsibility are lifelong practices. You won't master them overnight. You'll set a boundary and sometimes break it. You'll try to be compassionate and still judge yourself. You'll take responsibility and then slip back into blame. That's normal. The key is to keep returning to these principles. Every time you enforce a boundary, forgive yourself, or choose your response, you're building emotional strength. Over time, you'll find that your relationships are healthier, your stress is lower, and your sense of self is unshakable. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each day, you have power over your mind. That power begins with how you define your limits, how you treat yourself, and how you take ownership of your inner world. Building a resilient and free life begins with the work we do inside ourselves, not with changing the people or circumstances around us. When you master your emotions, the chaos of the outside world no longer has the same power to shake you. Life will always have waves, unexpected setbacks, difficult people, stressful jobs, global events that feel overwhelming. Most people are like small boats tossed in those waves, constantly reacting to every shift in the current. But when you develop inner stability, you become like a rock beneath the surface of the ocean. The wave can crash above you, storms can rage, but deep down you remain steady. Think about the difference between a calm, grounded person and someone who is always on edge. Two people can experience the same challenge, like losing a job. One spirals into panic and bitterness. The other takes a deep breath, processes their feelings, and begins planning their next step. The event is the same, but the internal response is completely different. That difference is resilience. Resilience isn't about never feeling pain or pretending to be unaffected. It's about having the tools to move through challenges without being destroyed by them. Imagine someone standing on the shore as powerful waves roll in. If they stiffen their body and try to fight the waves, they'll get knocked down again and again. If they learn to bend, to flow with the water, they can stay upright. Emotional mastery works the same way. When you resist reality, wishing people were different, clinging to how things should be, you exhaust yourself. When you accept what is and focus on how you choose to respond, you conserve energy and stay grounded. A resilient life also requires a shift in how we define strength. Many people think strength means being tough, unbreakable, or cold. But true strength often looks soft on the surface. It's the friend who listens calmly while others are shouting. It's the leader who takes time to consider before making a decision. It's the parent who kneels down to comfort a crying child instead of yelling. These responses require immense inner control. They come from someone who has done the hard work of knowing themselves and regulating their emotions. Strength is not about domination. It's about stability. Part of building that stability is detaching your sense of self from external validation. Most of us spend our lives chasing approval and avoiding criticism. We feel elated when someone praises us and crushed when someone criticizes us. This makes us emotionally fragile because our mood depends on forces we can't control. Inner freedom comes when you stop letting other people's opinions dictate your worth. Imagine a tree rooted deeply in the earth. The wind can blow from any direction, but the tree remains upright. When you live from the inside out, grounded in your values and purpose, you can appreciate praise without clinging to it and hear criticism without collapsing. This doesn't mean you ignore feedback. It means you process it thoughtfully instead of letting it control your emotions. Consider social media as a modern example. Many people tie their self-esteem to likes, followers, and comments. A photo with lots of likes makes them feel valuable. A post with little engagement makes them feel invisible. This constant dependence on external reactions creates anxiety and a sense of emptiness. A person with inner freedom might still use social media, but they do so without basing their identity on it. They know who they are whether or not the algorithm approves. This is what it means to live from within, to define your worth internally rather than outsourcing it to others. This kind of freedom also protects you from manipulation. When you rely on others for validation, you become easy to control. A boss can keep you working late by dangling praise. A partner can guilt you into compliance by threatening withdrawal. Marketers can convince you to buy things you don't need by playing on your insecurities. When you develop inner freedom, you see these tactics clearly and choose your response instead of reacting automatically. You can still appreciate compliments and consider feedback, but you're no longer enslaved by them. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." External events may affect you, but they don't define you. To reach this place of resilience and freedom, there's a clear journey. It begins with awareness. You must first recognize your emotional triggers, the hidden wounds and beliefs that cause you to overreact. When you notice that certain situations provoke outsized emotions, you shine a light on the root causes. This step is like mapping the terrain of your inner world. You can't navigate what you can't see. For example, if criticism always feels like a personal attack, it might be connected to childhood experiences of being harshly judged. Simply naming this connection is the first step toward breaking its power. The next step is the sacred pause. Between the stimulus and your reaction, there's a brief space where choice lives. Most people rush through this space without even noticing it. By deliberately pausing, taking a breath, counting to 5, you create room for conscious action. This is where emotional mastery begins. Instead of immediately yelling, shutting down, or lashing out, you give yourself time to decide what kind of person you want to be in that moment. Over time, this pause becomes second nature. It's like developing a reflex of calm in situations that once overwhelmed you. Mindfulness deepens this process. While the pause is about slowing down in moments of stress, mindfulness is about building awareness throughout your daily life. It's not limited to meditation sessions, though those can help. Mindfulness is present moment attention applied to ordinary activities, eating without distraction, listening fully in conversations, noticing your breath while walking. These practices train your brain to stay anchored in reality rather than spinning in stories about the past or future. When you're mindful, you notice emotional reactions as they arise, which gives you more opportunities to intervene before they escalate. For instance, you might catch the first flicker of irritation during a tense conversation and choose to breathe rather than snap. Reframing is the next tool in the journey. Once you've paused and observed, you can challenge the story your mind is telling. As Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of our pain comes not from what actually happened, but from the meaning we assign to it. If a friend cancels plans, your first thought might be, they don't care about me. Reframing invites you to consider alternatives. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they had an emergency. Maybe it has nothing to do with you. This shift doesn't mean ignoring patterns of behavior, but it prevents unnecessary suffering in the moment. Reframing can also transform challenges into growth opportunities. A job loss becomes a chance to reassess your goals. A failure becomes valuable data about what doesn't work. By changing the frame, you change your emotional experience. Boundaries come next. Awareness, pausing, mindfulness, and reframing help you manage your inner world. But boundaries protect you in the outer world. Boundaries define what you will and won't accept in relationships, work, and daily life. They are acts of self-respect. Without boundaries, you become exhausted and resentful because other people's needs constantly override your own. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about controlling your access and your choices. For example, you might decide, I don't check work emails after 7 p.m. This communicates to colleagues that your personal time matters and reminds you to honor your own limits. Boundaries also include internal limits, like choosing not to dwell on negative thoughts or overcommit your schedule. They create the structure needed for emotional freedom. When these steps work together, awareness, pause, mindfulness, reframing, and boundaries, you reach a state of inner freedom. This freedom is not about escaping pain forever or living in constant bliss. It's about having the tools to navigate without being at its mercy. One of the most profound signs of inner freedom is independence from external validation. Many people live like puppets, their strings pulled by the opinions of others. So you don't rely on others to tell you who you are. This allows you to make decisions based on values rather than fear or people-pleasing. You might turn down a promotion because it doesn't align with your life vision, even if others don't understand. You might leave a toxic relationship despite pressure to stay. You live from the inside out. Building a resilient and free life is not a one-time project. It's an ongoing practice, like strengthening a muscle. There will be days when you forget to pause, when you slip back into old patterns, when boundaries falter. That's normal. The key is to return to the path each time. Progress is not measured by never stumbling, but by how quickly you get back up. Over months and years, these small practices compound. You look back and realize you're no longer the same person. Challenges that once sent you into chaos now barely ripple your surface. Resilience doesn't mean isolation. In fact, it grows stronger in community. Surround yourself with people who respect your boundaries, practice mindfulness with you, and encourage growth. Share what you've learned so others can benefit. As more people build inner freedom, the external world becomes a little less chaotic. Families become more harmonious, workplaces more humane, societies more compassionate. The journey can be summarized as a simple flow. Awareness of your triggers, creating a pause between stimulus and response. Cultivating mindfulness to stay present. Reframing the stories you tell yourself, setting boundaries to protect your. Reframing without awareness misses the root causes. Together, they form a complete system for emotional mastery. Picture yourself standing at the center of a storm. The wind howls, the rain lashes, the waves crash. Most people are tossed around by this storm, exhausted and afraid. But you stand firm, not because the storm has stopped, but because you've built a strong foundation within. The world will never be perfectly calm, but you can be. That is what it means to build a resilient and free life. To be unshaken, not because life is easy, but because you have learned to navigate its challenges with strength, clarity, and grace. You just walked through a powerful journey, step by step, from chaos to clarity, from reactivity to freedom. We began by shining a light on the hidden triggers that so often run our lives without our consent. We learned how to create the sacred pause, that brief but crucial space where choice lives. We practiced mindfulness in everyday moments, bringing presence to even the most ordinary parts of life. We explored the art of reframing, turning suffering into strength by shifting our perspective. We set boundaries that protect our energy and relationships. And finally, we arrived at the destination, a life of resilience and inner freedom. This path is not easy. The world will continue to throw challenges at you. There will still be storms, losses, and unexpected disruptions. But now you know that you don't have to be tossed around by them. You have the tools to stand firm, to respond rather than react, to live from a place of deep stability. You've seen how each step builds on the last. Awareness of triggers, pause, mindfulness, reframing, boundaries, and ultimately freedom. Imagine what your life could look like a year from now if you truly lived these principles. Imagine facing criticism at work and calmly deciding how to grow instead of collapsing into shame. Imagine having a fight with your partner and responding with compassion instead of escalating into blame. Imagine walking through a stressful airport, a traffic jam, or a family holiday with a steady heart, no longer a prisoner of external. Don't wait for the perfect time to start. Begin today. Pick one practice, maybe just pausing before you speak in a tense moment, and build from there. Over time, these small acts will transform your inner world. If this video has inspired you, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel. These simple actions not only help this message reach more people, but they also strengthen our community of seekers committed to living with wisdom and compassion. And if you feel moved to support this work directly, you can use the Super Thanks feature on YouTube to contribute. Your generosity fuels the creation of more in-depth content like this, bringing timeless ideas to a modern audience. As we close, I want to leave you with this reminder: you're not powerless. No matter how chaotic the world becomes, you have power over your mind. You can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf them. You can't stop the storm, but you can become the calm center within it. This journey isn't about becoming perfect or never feeling pain. It's about becoming free to live, to love, to grow, and to face each day with courage. So the next time life crashes over you like a wave, remember what you've learned here. Pause, breathe, return to the present. Choose your response, and know that with each choice, you are building a resilient, unshakable life. The world may never calm down, but you can. And when you do, you'll discover that true strength was never about controlling the storm. It was about becoming the rock beneath the waves. Thank you for walking this path with me. Now, go out into the world and live it. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and consider using the Super Thanks to support this channel. Together, we can spread this message of freedom and resilience to those who need it most. Your journey is just beginning, and every step you take matters.